And we are back. Yes, we are. O&B Puckcast number 277. I'm your host, Isaiah. Brought to you by FlyersNittyGritty.com, Summit Adjusters, Jim South Street, and of course, we're featured on Hockey Hot Stove, the hottest hockey forum website out there. Just make sure you go to HockeyHotStove.com. Scroll down, you'll see the insignia of the O&B Puckcast, and it links you to all of our YouTube shows. And of course, tonight, we are live streaming on X, Facebook, and YouTube. So feel free to weigh in with your comments. This team is puzzling, to say the least. So before we get to our esteemed guest, just want to bring in Chef B. Our buddy Dan is kind of like a game time decision, kind of like Coots was the other day. I think it's likely we won't see him, but I don't want to rule him out. You never know. We've had Dan come in late in the past. So what are your opening thoughts tonight?
Well, it started off as a good week, didn't it? Since last we talked to you, and then it kind of went down. There are a couple of positives to take out of it, so I'm sure we're going to touch on those with Jordan, and I can't wait to get it started, man.
Absolutely. You know, the Flyers went 2-2 since our last show and are now 6-5-1 after a dozen games, coming off back-to-back losses this weekend versus the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Calgary Flames. They have already completed 1/4 of their home schedule for this season, which makes it really rough as to, watching them lose these games. Then they have 2 games on the road coming up. We'll talk more about that. But, Chef, I want to go back to you before we bring in Jordan Hall, just to remind the people that when they have home damage, tell them again, if you remind them, why they should call Summit Adjusters before they call their insurance company. We see the Summit logo for those.
See the Summit logo there. Yeah. So you definitely, if you ever have any kind of damage, you're on fire, wind, plumbing loss, call us first. Call the guys at Summit first. They can help get you the most money for your repairs, because one wrong word can get you denied on your claim, get you partially denied, or even stall out the process. They're always going to tell you partial truths. The pipe isn't covered. Yes, the pipe isn't covered. It's never covered under anybody but the residual damage done by water and all that in excess is, especially on plumbing claims. So, if you have any kind of damage to your home, call Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Just tell them that the chef sent you, man.
You got it. Let us not delay any further. Joining us from NBC Sports Philadelphia, one of our favorite guests, Jordan Hall. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me, guys. Always great to see you both, and always great to chat some Flyers hockey with you guys.
You got it. Yeah, you're one of the hardest working guys on the beat, and you ask insightful questions. But one thing I always like about you, and it's not a knock on anybody else, it's pretty clear. You just want the facts, the information, and there's no kind of like agenda or, a big word here, tendentious kind of questioning or anything like that. So this team went into this weekend 6-3-1. They come out with I don't know if I call it disastrous this early in the season, but an opportunity to capitalize on a good start. Because I don't know, even 7-4-1 would sound better than 6-5-1, which means they've kind of been on the treadmill.
I really thought the weekend was super disappointing for them. And even by listening to Rick talk at post game on Sunday night, I think he probably felt the same way. He even challenged some guys to step up, to show some will. And he thought he really let fans down. He mentioned how he felt bad for fans that came to watch that Sunday game, that 2-1 loss to the Flames, who came into the game at the bottom of the NHL standings. So it really soured everything the Flyers kind of had did at home up until that point. And perhaps it's a little bit of a sign that this could be who the Flyers are this season. They're going to be a little up and down. They're going to be a little offensively challenged at times. And maybe Dan Vladar kind of masked some of their issues early in the season. So it still very much is a rebuilding team, but I think the Flyers can be better with it than what they showed this weekend. And it really did kind of put a bad taste in some people's mouths after the promising start, where I think some fans were starting to feel very good about Rick Tocchet and what they were doing. And now it's a little bit of prove it time again to try to win some fans back.
Yeah, Chef.
Well, you speak to Tocchet, and he didn't necessarily call out anybody, but he just said he painted a broad stroke. but I think people understood that a lot of the veterans were painted in that brush. But also, too, you can't blame the goaltending because the goaltending, they only gave up a couple goals. Even Kolosov looked good. The goaltending's not the reason they lost those last 2 games. So in this league, you need to score before, in order to win games. And I think that is that. I had said at the beginning of the season that they would be in a lot of these shootout type games. And I said there is even a chance that they would set a club record for the amount of times they've gone to overtime. They're already at 4. So what's your assessment of what happened this weekend? And, are we on the right track? Are there going to be a lot of games like this all season, you think?
I do feel like they are going to play a ton of close games. They've already played a lot of 1-goal games. As you mentioned, Chef, they've been to overtime 4 times. Even their wins to start the homestand were in the shootout. So, they're just eking by in some of these wins, too, where if they didn't pull those out, man, the homestand would have looked totally different. I do think they're going to play a ton of tight games. And Rick Tocchet earlier in the homestand mentioned how, that's a good way to learn, to play kind of playoff hockey in those close games. He said some of his best teams when he was an assistant coach learned that way through playing in close games. But one thing I had been thinking about recently was how much Rick Tocchet has pleaded for the Flyers to get to the middle of the ice, to play around the net, to play in the hard areas. And the Flyers do need to do that more, but that's not so much just a guy wanting to go down there and bang around and be physical and have a hard nose for the net. I think it takes a lot of skill to do that. And I just wonder, do they have enough players with that skill to go to those hard areas and be a weapon down there? You can plead all you want that the Flyers need to do that, but I also wonder if they have enough skillful guys to play that type of game. That was just kind of on my head recently as I saw these last 2 games, and you keep saying, man, they need to get to the middle of the ice, get to the net, play in the interior. These are things Rick Tocchet is asking them to do, and they haven't done it. Do they have enough talent to do that? I think that's something up for debate and something we'll have to see throughout the course of the season.
Well, I will say this. When they were scoring those higher, 3, 4, 5 goals in a game, they were driving the net. Tippett got 3 of his 5 goals in front of the net, So there are players that are actually going towards the net. And then all of a sudden they kind of coasted this weekend. It seemed like they wanted a rest or something. They were skirting the outside of the play. Even you can't call it the Cates line because, Foerster was out. But even Cates and Brink. Brink was on the perimeter where all season he's been in front of the net. So that was disappointing because that quite frankly, Noah Cates is one of my favorite players. I think he's having a great year so far. I think he's been there. But when you start seeing your dependent line like that, skirting the outside, guys are going to copy that. Do you think that, what is the reasoning for the sudden flip of the switch? Because it really happened on Saturday before the game with the Flames. So that's the big trigger there.
Yeah, sometimes you see bad habits seep back in. Maybe it's after a couple wins where things are going good for you and you feel good and you don't feel like the urgency or the pressure to get to the hard areas of the ice. I wonder if that happened a little bit with the Flyers. And I also just think it takes high-level skill to execute in those hard areas of the ice, in those tight areas where the window is not very big. And I do wonder if the Flyers have enough guys that can do that consistently. Like Owen Tippett's a really good example. When he's going great, man, he is pushing the puck up ice. He's making power moves to the net, and he's scoring in those areas. And then sometimes he becomes a little bit too much of a perimeter player. And I'm not putting it all on him. There are a number of guys that I think played on the perimeter and didn't want to get to those hard areas. But it's an excellent question. I think it's the million-dollar question because it's even puzzling Rick Tocchet right now because they had a morning meeting on Sunday, and the entire meeting was about getting to the interior, getting pucks to the net, and not passing up opportunities. And then they have a game against the Flames where I think they had 18 shots on the night. Clearly, they didn't do enough of what they emphasized all morning. So you wonder, too, if it's just part of the roster, like the build of the roster has some guys that maybe don't know how to play in those areas quite as much yet. Can it be fixed? I think so. But it's worth watching closely because you can't have these types of games in succession where you're this offensively challenged because the Flyers have gotten really good play from their goaltenders. And you do wonder if that might come back to earth a little bit. And then, man, that's a recipe for disaster. If you don't get goaltending and then you're struggling to score, the Flyers can't play like that.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I think it was Kevin Kurzman. It wasn't the only one. You probably brought it up. I've read so many articles, and just it was something I noticed right away when we saw last night when TK had that look right at the top of the circle, and he was so hell bent on making the optimal play, if you want to call it that. He sends it over to Igor Zamula. Now, Igor Zamula maybe technically had a slightly better look, but he's nowhere near the shooter. He's not the scorer. You get a good look in a game when you're hardly generating shots, and then you pass it off. I mean, this has been kind of their MO since the Giroux years, really. And you talked about the makeup of the roster. I think it's a mindset because you look at players like Danny Briere, and you look at the Cates line and how much chaos. Sometimes it's not skill. Yeah, I mean, to have this fine execution in front of the net, yeah, there's a level of skill, puck skills, and handling and the like. But a lot of it is will. And I think this is what upsets Tocchet. Even if it's a little sloppy, the chaos in front creates opportunities. The Flyers have some big bodies that should be able to get some garbage and knock it in. Doesn't have to be pretty. And I think that's the frustration.
I do too. And I agreed with Rick Tocchet. I think a lot of it is a matter of will, like wanting to do that consistently. Now, listen, sometimes the Flyers should look for the next pass and maybe make the highlight reel play. Like those high-level plays do work sometimes, and it's a good way to create offense. But when you're struggling and you're coming off a game where you really weren't too pleased with the offensive effort, that's when you really want to simplify and kind of hammer home the message of let's get to the net, get to the areas where the high percentage plays are made and the goals are scored. And they didn't do it. It was 2 nights in a row on home ice where they just got away from that and didn't simplify. So I think that's what really irked Rick Tocchet, especially when he had a whole meeting Sunday morning about let's do it this way, and they didn't.
So I have a question too, and this is, one, I will make an observation. Finally, it's nice to see that they're actually executing set plays on a power play. So that was good. And then you see TK's shot, and then you go back and you look at that play where he passes to Zamula, and you're like, oh my God. The only thing I could think of, who was in between him and Zamula? Was it Zegras? Somebody was in the middle, and it kind of hopped over that. The only thing I can think of is that he was going for Zegras or whoever was in the slot. I can't remember off the top of my head. So, but okay, so I'm thinking there, in that case, then, all right, if that's the case, but you see his shot, and you know that he can do a good job with his shot. So I don't understand what the whole thing is there. So, and it's not just him, too. There are other guys like Grebenkin, who we thought was, all preseason, him and Obels are shooting the puck whenever they get the puck. So that's good. So if that happens, that's great. But now all of a sudden it's like, okay, these are real season games now. I feel like I should feed a veteran or something. Do you think that mentality is cut in here?
I do think sometimes the younger players are a little hesitant to take a shot because they're just trying to appease people. They're trying to be people pleasers where it's like, all right, I have Travis Konechny out there. He's the guy that's a 2-time All-Star. He's the guy that's scored 30-plus goals. Let me make him look good, give him the pass, rather than be the selfish player who has to take the shot. But guys eventually need to shake that. They need to understand, young or not, if the coach is asking you to shoot and the opportunity is there, a shot can be as good as a pass. Because even if it's a shot that obviously gets denied, it can create a rebound, and it makes the goalie have to change, go from post to post and have to worry about that rebound. So I think more guys need to understand that a shot is just as good as a pass sometimes. And Yeah, the connecting one was glaring. I thought he played a decent game. He obviously scores the only goal. But where I was in the press box, it was a perfect bird's eye view on top of Konechny, and he has all the ice in front of him to shoot. And to see him basically do like a backwards pass, it was like, wow, I couldn't believe it. And he knew it right away. Like you could see it on his face.
Like, whoa.
Right. The whole arena saw it. And then maybe after that, he was like, all right, shot mentality, let's shoot. But that one was a very good example, almost in a nutshell, of what the Flyers have been doing sometimes, where like the obvious shot is there and they try to make a high level pass, and it's just simplify. And I think the Flyers are going to try to do that on the road here coming up.
Okay. Maybe it is that time for when, okay, we've had too many at home. Let's just get on the road. Let's go. Hey, let's get away from home. Sometimes you need a good long road trip. We saw it a couple of years ago in San Jose when they won in San Jose and like trounced them. It turned around and then they end up having that great road trip and such. But my next question is, and I'm speaking for myself because I watch the other games around the league too. Kind of like wait for the wife to go to bed and then I sneak in some West Coast stuff. But my question is this, and I'm not making an excuse. This is not an excuse. I think the Flyers had a chance to win those other two games that they lost. Like they hung in there all game. There was no reason. But the officiating, wow. It's a lot of penalties, a lot of like clutch and grab calls all season, and a lot of interference misses too. So I think they would have burned the stadium to the ground if they'd have called a 5-minute major on Michkov in that game. And, obviously, and then I see people out there and, of course, it's Toronto fans. So take everything with a grain of salt. And they're saying, oh yeah, he should have gotten it. He totally hit him right in the numbers. He wasn't even looking at him to hit him in the numbers. So my question is it, and I've seen it in other games too. It was, there was a LA game. There was an Edmonton game where the officiating is just way subpar. Now, is there a talk around the league or like to call more penalties or something along that line? And am I the only one noticing it? I don't think I am because I hear people complaining about the refs all everywhere, but they always do. It just seems to be more so this year.
I think there's a little something to that. I can't say I've noticed like a huge glaring problem where I'm sitting there and saying, man, there's way too many penalties. Has it been iffy, ticky-tack? Sure. And I do think later in the season, the whistles start to get swallowed a little bit because it becomes like playoff hockey where the officials really don't want to dictate the game. And they really kind of let the physicality take over. They bury that whistle a little bit to allow some more things to happen, extracurriculars, a little more stick stuff to go on. So perhaps it's a little bit early in the season and refs and officials are, they are a little whistle happy. The Michkov hit was so surprising to me because it was almost like a nothing play. Like it was so innocuous. It looked like there was no malicious intent. He didn't even try to hit him all that hard. And unfortunately, I know Tanev was just coming back from a concussion, and it's unfortunate. I wonder if he suffered another concussion, and I felt bad for Michkov. I really felt bad for Tanev, of course, and I hope he's okay, and it sounds like he is. But I felt bad for Michkov too because I really don't think he did anything vicious there, and I think that's why the response from the Maple Leafs on the ice wasn't all that bad because I don't think they saw anything too bad either.
Well, Domi kept going after him. There were a couple of guys that kept like poking at Michkov, but like I said, I wonder, and call me crazy, if he wasn't hurt and down like that, I don't know if that's a penalty. I don't know if they'll call that. I think that might be incidental contact, blah, blah, blah. But, oh, God, somebody's hurt here. We have to call something to be able to review it to see if he was cold-cocked or whatever. And then, of course, when you do that, a lot of times I've only seen one or two where they've actually said, there is no penalty on the play. And one of them was against the Flyers, of course, last year. But, but I'm just saying, like, generally speaking, I don't know. If that's any other player on the ice, it doesn't go down so easy. I just think there's something there to it.
No, I wouldn't disagree. I think if Tanev is okay and he pops back up, I think the play probably continues.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he gets hit and something clearly happens where he falls on the ice and he's down. And then, yeah, suddenly I think the officials feel a need to give him interference or something to kind of say, yeah, that, unfortunately a guy got hurt. We need to do something about it so the other team's not too upset. And I think that is relatively common. Was it interference? You could probably argue that it was, but it just didn't look malicious or bad or super obvious. What made it obvious was that Tanev went down and didn't get back up.
Yeah, I think the other aspect of it is that I think Michkov was looking for the puck coming to him, and he sees Tanev and knows what kind of player he is. He's kind of bracing for contact, and it just turned out bad. And you get a guy who's coming off a concussion, and he has that kind of response to a hit. It's kind of scary and a little bit ominous. But apparently today he was well enough to travel with the team, which is a good sign, because if it was really a bad concussion, being up in the air can have some really tough effects for that kind of condition.
And sometimes they stretch a player off just for precautionary reasons. And I'm glad they do that. It makes perfect sense. Be as safe as possible. And I think some people were hoping that was the case, and it seemed like it was, which was great. I'm very happy that Tanev's okay. You never want to see someone go off on a stretcher, and I think it's great that he's okay. And I think Michkov's going to move forward, and I'm sure he was very happy to hear that Tanev was okay.
Yeah. I think that your point, but I had to step away for a second, that the Flyers definitely have had a problem with stick fouls. And even though you could say that they're ticky-tack, we see a lot of the Flyers not moving their feet, extending their stick. And some of it might be a byproduct of the Flyers still early on in the Tocchet regime, not quite sure where they need to be. There's hesitation of thinking too much, and then they get caught flat-footed, and this is what happens.
No, absolutely. I think Rick Tocchet said it the other day that stick infractions happen when you're not skating, when you're not moving. And if you are not sure where you are supposed to be on the ice, or if you're still learning a system, you probably are thinking, and then as a result, you're not moving your feet. And then as a result, you use your stick to defend rather than positioning. So I think a lot of it is on the Flyers. And I think there's some credence to what Chef said that earlier in the season, maybe the whistles are coming a little more frequent. Whereas I think later in the season, when the games become bigger, they're going to allow some stuff to go. And I think that's the way it should be.
Well, the good news is, at least with all the penalties they've taken, the penalty kill has been actually quite good. But are they in the top 10 yet, or is it right around 12 still? I'm not sure, but they've gotten up there, so that's nice. They're killing penalties.
Yeah, when I looked the other day, I believe they were in the top 10. That might have been going into the weekend or even going into Sunday. So they were up there, and it's been very good. I think that's a very promising thing. I think it will be great to see them generate some offense off it. John Tortorella's, I think, his second season when they were actually in the playoff race. They were the league leader in shorthanded goals, and they were just a real threat shorthanded. Now, obviously, penalty kill success is not based on goal scoring, but it can hurt, especially if you're a team that struggles to score a little bit. If you can generate offense and shorthanded, that's great.
Yeah, plus it keeps the other team off balance. They feel like they have no margin for error, or Konechny, or back then Lawton is going to be racing the other way, and it creates, gets in the mind of the opponent. So I wanted to go back to the 28th of October, that special night, the 28th, against the Pittsburgh Penguins, Battle of Pennsylvania. Wild game. I thought the Flyers at the end of the game deserved to win that game, but they took the most circuitous path imaginable. And, Crosby had tied this game in overtime, and then the Flyers took a penalty, and then have all these brawls, and then we thought Foerster won, but it was offside. What have you ever seen, like, sequence after sequence that had you hanging in the balance for like such an early season game that had almost like a playoff feel, even though neither team is probably going to be playoff bound?
I can't. Off the top of my head, I cannot right now. And as a sports writer, it was one of the more maddening games because you're so much trying to prepare for the end of the game and to get your story up right when the buzzer sounds. And that was a game where there was 3 or 4 instances where it was literally going back and forth. Like, you think Pittsburgh wins in overtime, then you think the Flyers win in overtime, then it goes to a shootout. Oh man, it was crazy. But I will say, I thought that was a good sign to see the Flyers win that game, because when Crosby scores that goal in the third period on that funny bounce, you kind of just think in the past the Flyers would lose that game. Like, here we go again. Sidney Crosby gets them. They're going to cough up a lead in the third period. But they showed some resolve, and they made enough plays, of course, in the skills competition too, to win the game. So I thought that was a really good signature win almost early in the season. Now, of course, they had the weekend that they had that kind of soured it all, but I really like that win. And that Pittsburgh team is playing well right now. It's got a ton of pedigree. And to see the Flyers pull that one out, not let that goal by Crosby kind of ruin the night, ruin the game, was a real positive sign for the Flyers. But that was truly a insane game where, man, it seemed like 3 or 4 times it was going to go either way.
And it was good to see Ersson kind of like rally from maybe not such a great goal and then really play well and make that so-called momentum or key save that made you feel confident, like, okay, this guy's going to win some games. You know, Vladar's been way out ahead and really playing very well until, I guess, the other night, but he didn't really play that poorly. But getting back to the Pittsburgh game, so some good things came out of that were intangibles, as well as seeing Ersson kind of pick his game up.
Absolutely. And Ersson, I think, is such a good storyline that you mentioned, Isaiah, because it is critical that he plays better this year too. It can't just be Dan Vladar. The whole point of bringing Dan Vladar in was to kind of strengthen the tandem, not just to bring in a goalie that they think can be a number one, but really strengthen that duo. And I think we've seen Ersson in the past play really well in a tandem. He did it with Carter Hart before Hart had to leave that season because of the Hockey Canada sexual assault case. They were really good together. And if Ersson is being fueled by competition with Vladar, and you see him play the way he did in those 2 shootouts, he kind of responds to a poor goal. I think in both of those games, I thought he had maybe a leaky goal, and he responded well and was able to pull through. It's a shame he's now battling with an injury, but I don't believe it's going to be long-term. I think this IR stint could be relatively short. So if he comes back and plays the way he did in those games, and they get Vladar playing the way he did, I think that's a real promising tandem in net that will give the Flyers a chance most nights.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my thing is this: with the goalies, and Sam hasn't been bad at all, and I'll say that everybody was so focused on this team and their goalies being so bad, and we have to give credit to our Dan Silver here, because he told us at the beginning of the season when they acquired him, actually one of our summer shows, right after they acquired him, signed him, that he was somebody he went out and looked at and got on his fantasy team because he thought he would be somebody that especially, and he knew all the stats because his playoff run last year, and Dan was, I think, doing pretty good in his league. And he was, when they were playing the hot card, he was, obviously he was playing with Wolf. So that's credit there to there. So with these 2 goalies, I said not so much. Are they able to, if they could square away their defense, which isn't really that bad either? Let's face it, there are 2 lines. The expected goals for the top 2 defensive pairings have been like very, very good on 5-on-5. So can't complain there. And the defense on the penalty kill has been good. It's really the goaltending. I mean, it's really not the goal. It was the goal scoring is what I'm talking about. Is the real loose, nut here on the wheel. My question would be this: if they can figure out maybe a way to secure, to get the goal scoring going, and maybe they pick up in a decent trade with somebody, maybe that a better defenseman or somebody that can actually lead the pack on the D back there. And the goaltending stays the way it is. I'm not talking about them playing on their head; just stays a little above average. Now, I made a prediction that they're going to get that last playoffs. What do you call it? Wild card this year. Is that, you think that's in the realm of possibility? Because I think if you look around at the other teams, I think there's a lot of room for the other teams to kind of poop the bed, so to speak. They're not as good as we thought they were. Look, here the Penguins were supposed to be crap. They just came out on fire. are they going to be able to sustain that all year? The Devils are always up and down. And then you got the Rangers. And then I'm talking to all the other teams in their conference. There's a good chance they could get in like the last two or 3 days of the season, last 2 or 3 games of the season, like they kind of got bumped out a couple of years ago, like we were talking about. What do you think?
I do think if they continue to get the goaltending and their defense is as stable as it's been, absolutely. I don't see why not, because it's really ironic that I thought the 2 question marks coming into the season, and I believe the Flyers probably felt the same way, were goaltending. Would Dan Vladar be an answer? Would Samuel Ersson respond to having some struggles last year? And then defensively, would they have enough stability? Because they really didn't have answers on that third pair yet. You really, I think, needed to see Cam York bounce back. There were some question marks at 2 critical areas, defense and goaltending. And the one strength I thought they had was up front. I think they really liked their picture at forward, which was some youth, some additions in Zegras and Dvorak. I think they really felt they were going to score goals. It was really going to come down to goaltending and defense. It's been flip-flopped. So if they can absolutely get some goal scoring and find some guys to spark it there, absolutely. I don't see why they can't be in a playoff race, especially in an Eastern Conference picture where there's no real bad team, but there's no real like clear-cut like 5-6 teams running away with things. It really looks like there's a lot of middling teams where if you hang around, you're going to have a shot to make the playoffs. So, yeah, I think the big question will be, can the Flyers generate enough shots and generate enough offense to consistently score and support what they've gotten so far in terms of in net and on defense?
Yeah. So let me just interject something here, because I don't want to go too far into the show without the latest update. I don't know if you guys got to it because I had to step away, but they have a little bit more of a definitive timeline with Tyson Foerster. He's been put on IR retroactive to the point where he'll likely be out until about mid-month, Jordan, about the 14th or 15th, because there was no break, but it must be a really bad bruise or something.
Yeah, it's retroactive to this past Saturday. So, he'll have to be out a week. It's 7 days. So he's going to at least miss the next 3 games. And I imagine the Flyers are hopeful after that. Hopefully it's, the swelling's gone down and everything looks better, that he'll be able to come back. But I think it's still kind of in wait and see mode to see how long this could take. And it was interesting. Obviously, he was able to finish that game and score a goal. But, I've seen guys have a really bad block shot. They finish that game and then things change after the game. I believe Cam York a couple of years ago, actually, he blocked the Alex Ovechkin shot, played the rest of the game, and then ended up having like somewhat of a fracture. Yeah. So that can happen, unfortunately. But I think the Flyers believe they avoided anything super long-term, which is, I think, critical, because Foerster, I think, might be one of their most effective players, period. Just with the way he can score, with the way he can shoot, and how well he's become in the full length of the rink.
Yeah. And, of course, Emil Andrae, again, back up. I mean, do you think that he's, like, with some of their offensive woes, his puck moving acumen, it seems to be, I mean, not like Zamula's playing bad, but both him and Yinning are kind of like yeoman defensemen. And with the Juleson playing very competently, kind of how I guess Tocchet envisioned, maybe feel a little bit better about taking chances with a guy like Andrae, who can be a little bit of a high risk, high reward player, but it seems like they need the boost offensively that he might be able to give them.
I agree. And in the 2 games he's played, like, he has stood out. Even in limited minutes, you can see his confidence, his puck moving ability. And then he gives them pretty much a third playmaker on all those 3 pairs, because you have a puck moving guy. Well, 2 of them in York, Sanheim on that first pair. You have a puck moving guy in Drysdale in the second pair. And then on the third pair, if you put him, Andrae, with Noah Juleson, it gives you a physical defenseman in Juleson and then a puck mover in Andrae. I think it just gives them another layer. And he's just been, whenever he's out there, he's been a confident puck moving guy that I think creates some offense. He's confident in his decision making. I think the Flyers would love to give him more looks. It just so happens he's the only one that's waivers exempt. And this early in the season, do you really want to put a guy that's not waivers exempt out there and have him get taken Whereas you can basically tell Andrae, hey, unfortunately, we just have some roster decisions where we need a forward or we need this. Go down to Lehigh, play a couple games, you'll be back here. And I think ideally they'll want him up here more than he's down in Lehigh. It's just the way it's worked so far. I think the Flyers hope to eventually kind of shake this and keep him up here, and where it's not this revolving door, because he just looks like an answer to me.
Chef?
So I will say this. I'm not that biggest Zamula fan, but I will say this. It's way too early in the season to lose him for nothing. You know, I mean, you don't want to put him on waivers and have somebody pick him up. Now, the other thing is, I'll say with Drysdale, it's good to see him playing so well defensively. I think this could be a situation, and I think I compared it with Noah Cates when, you know, we kind of forced him into the center role, and hey, you need to shut down the other guys. And it hurt. It hurt his offense. But once he got, I guess, the muscle memory of doing the regular things right, the scoring opportunities presented himself, and your mind goes, hey, I can do this. I think that'll be the situation. I think we'll see Drysdale more at the end of the season here, rack up some goals. And then my last thing is, I have no problem. Juulsen's been kind of like, you know, if we're not mentioning your name during the game, I guess you're doing it all right. Unless you're one of the scoring defensemen that we want to hear your name, especially on power plays. But Juulsen's been okay. But, whenever it's time to rest Juulsen, do you think that there's any possibility? Because they actually looked great for a stretch down with the Phantoms last year. I think I would like to see Yinning and an Andrae pairing, because they were pairing partners all last season, most of last season with the Phantoms. I'd like to see what they could do at NHL level.
I certainly think that's a possibility. I believe both are left-handed shots, so that's not ideal. Juulsen is a righty shot, so I think Tocchet has said he likes to have, if he can, lefty-righty throughout his pairs. But it's never a perfect world, and I think Yinning has showed that he can play the right, or even Andrae, I think, can probably play his opposite side. And I do think there could be some chemistry there, and there's the good balance of Yinning is more of a stay-at-home guy, can take care of his defensive responsibilities, and allow Andrae to kind of freelance and be that type of player. So sure, I think that is something that we could eventually see. But Juulsen has been just very solid. You haven't recognized him, as you said, Chef. And I think now it's just a matter of finding him a consistent partner. That's been the problem, is finding someone that will complement him and be consistent enough where the Flyers don't have to ride their top pairs too much. At the end of the day, you gotta allocate minutes a little bit, and I don't think they've found that just yet with their third pair. But potentially Andrae could be an answer there, where they can rely on him a little bit more later in the game and not feel like they can't trust him.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's an issue of height anymore.
Yeah.
I think it's an issue of let's get some offense going. And I think if you look at the games he was in, Andrae, I think their first pass out of the zone was so much better. I think they spread the defense better when he was out there, when they were entering zones. It just seems the more mobility they had at the point with him, I think it showed. And I don't think anymore that height should be a question.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the issues that we're referring to kind of came to the fore somewhat in the Nashville game. The Flyers come away with a 4-1 win. The Flyers are, I think, vastly outplayed, and they had their bacon saved by Dan Vladar with a typical performance that we've seen up to this point, at least up until the Toronto game. And also they had to deal with the funny bone, I guess it was, injury to Coots, which lasted one game. Thank God for that. But I think it kind of presaged what we saw over the weekend. That's where we started seeing a deterioration in their play. And if looking back, it seems like, wow, it's not a surprise, because they were, like you were talking about earlier, getting into some bad habits, and they were able to get away with it versus Nashville. They play a quality team like Toronto, no good. Then they play a really desperate team in Calgary, where everybody's talking about trading half the roster and, going for, Gavin McKenna. So, yeah, I mean, that game kind of fooled us a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of swings of emotion, I think, for Flyers fans so far, and you can't blame them. I mean, every time you feel like you're seeing something where maybe the team is taking that next step and they're off to a positive start. Sometimes they come out and they give you a reason to not believe. So perhaps this is just par for the course when you're rebuilding. It's year one of a different coach. So there's going to be some early hiccups. They're starting to battle the injury bug a little bit. So I think this was possibly to be expected. But, I think people are going to want to start to see some results again. And I think there's enough there for the Flyers to, again, be competitive, be very interesting. And I think they can score more. Rick Tocchet hasn't always had shot volume teams, but I don't think you need to be a high volume shot team to win. Even 2 years ago, his team in Vancouver that I think had 50 wins, they went to Game 7 in the second round with the Oilers, was not a high volume shot team. And you don't have to win with high volume shots, but the Flyers can be better though. I don't think they want to be last in the league in shots per game. There needs to be more. It doesn't, you don't have to lead the league in shots, but they need to be more dangerous offensively, get more pucks to the net, all the cliches to score a little more offense. But I think they have guys that can provide it. I think Michkov's going to start to score. Konechny's got more in him. Tippett can be more consistent. Zegras, even the last couple games, has not been there offensively after having that awesome start. I think they have enough, and then I think they have some kids down with the Phantoms that could potentially come up and provide a boost. So it's early. That's why you don't get too wrapped up in wins and you don't get too wrapped up in losses.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the one thing that I was reading that Kevin Kerr said that really resonated with me, and I think you've said some very similar things in your articles, and I don't know if it's a system like we referred to earlier with Rick Tocchet, but the line combinations, it seems like outside of the Cates line, there doesn't it's on offense, it doesn't seem like anybody knows where anybody else is going to be. There's not a lot of some simpatico or whatever you call it, or chemistry. And I think part of what Tocchet is going to have to do, he's going to have to break up that line when Foerster comes back, because as good as those guys are, they're kind of like a stabilizer for the lineup. I think you need somebody attributes some of those players. I think a Foerster was somebody like Michkov who can't get off the stick. And we could talk about how he clearly wasn't in shape for whatever reason, whether it was the ankle or whatever. So there's some issues that are, I think, creating hesitation and the deference to, hey, let this guy shoot it. And also in terms of I'm not sure where this guy's going to be. Hey, let me stay on the outside. Because some of it might be will, but some of it also if I go in and my line mate goes in and we're kind of confused, we're going to get caught on an odd man break going the other way. So I still think they're working through some of that. How do you feel about that?
I see this the same thing. I don't think we've seen any surefire things aside from the Noah Cates line, which I think is probably pretty disappointing. You want to see a little more chemistry. I think we've seen glimpses of it, whereas Zegras looks pretty dynamic with Michkov. Christian Dvorak seems like a really good complementary player where if you play him with anyone, he's going to be there. He'll be that sound defensive presence, and he can make some things happen offensively. But the Flyers do need to find some more combinations that work. And I think it's good to stick with things. Tocchet, I think, has stuck with things a little bit more, which I like. I don't think you can just toss it all in a blender after 2 periods. I think we've seen him stick with things a little bit more. It's a shame that they had some injuries over the weekend with Couturier and Foerster where they had to jumble things up again. But that will be a tough question. I think if they don't get enough chemistry from other combinations, do you have to break up that Noah Cates line and start to sprinkle their effectiveness throughout the lineup? It's something worth monitoring. I think they want to stay away from it because that Cates line is excellent. Why break up chemistry if you at least have it on one line? But that could be a question they have to face if they don't get enough offense elsewhere.
Chef?
So I said it last year, and I posed it to other people we've had on our show, and I'm going to pose it to you again. Like I said, I'm a big Cates fan. I think you put Cates with Michkov, it frees Michkov to be the man. And, if the chemistry is good with Zegras, then that's fine. Leave it with Cates, Zegras, and Michkov. It's with Abel's up now and Dvorak, you have that center flexibility. especially in your bottom two lines. And I just think that, well, hey, if the Cates line is the number one line, the top line, and you have to do something to get offense going somewhere, I just think throw Noah Cates in that mix. I know we seem to, excuse me, Dvorak with them, but I think that Cates' skill set lends itself a little bit better with those guys, and Dvorak would be somebody I would love to see play with TK, because I just think that there could be something there as well. So your thoughts?
I like those two ideas. Noah Cates is almost becoming the Sean Couturier back when Voracek, Giroux, and those guys were here, where he was a spark plug for any player that needed to get right. You put him on Couturier's line, and suddenly that player was scoring, and that line was effective. I wonder if Cates is starting to kind of quietly become that guy where if you need a spark, you put him with Cates, and everything looks better. So I would not be opposed to maybe giving him a look with Michkov. I think Cates has shown he can create a little more offense. There's some talent there from a playmaking perspective. He's obviously so good defensively and the full length of the ring, but I think he can make plays too. So I would not be opposed to that. And Dvorak is an intriguing guy because I really do think he can scale your lineup. He can play center. He can play wing. He can play in your top six. He can play in your bottom 3, fourth line roles. So that is a guy that I think the Flyers are going to utilize a lot and kind of yo-yo him around a little bit where he can help other players. And perhaps they're going to have to experiment some more. But I think ideally you got to stick with things to see if it works. I know that's really tough probably as a coach and even as a fan. When stuff's not working, it's like, oh, you got to make changes. But sometimes just letting it play out and letting guys eventually get comfortable, see how it goes. And sometimes you just got to stick with it.
The one player that was going to the front of the net these last several games is Coots, and he kind of paid for it, but also too. So, and I think that if Dvorak plays with him and TK on the line, I think right then and there, because TK likes to roam, you got Coots at the front, and Dvorak seems to have that hockey sense to put himself in the area where it's going to be beneficial to whoever he's playing with. You always see him. He's always in support, which is a good thing. And I think that's just me throwing that out there. I think that, if you look at it, because I told people, watch the Cates line. It's very rare on TV, because especially if you're watching on TV, that when somebody has the puck, that you don't see the whole line. They're all in a triangle. They're all spinning around. They're always in zone. And when they're forechecking, there's always somebody in support and somebody high too. So they've got it down. We need to make this contagious for the rest of the guys here, because I think that Grebenkin, Abels, and Hathaway, they're starting to pick up as a fourth line there. I mean, you could see that chemistry is clicking with them. And I think that, am I the only one saying it? I'll ask you. I think that they could be that other line that's clicking right now. And you're talking about just tweaking 2 lines instead of 4.
Well, I want to say, I think actually Grebenkin is an ideal player to try while Tyson Foerster is out, because of the way he digs and the way he can possess the puck. And that's something that line can do. And by doing that, if he could actually, maybe if not staple, but become a decent alternative, that might free up Tyson Foerster to help out another line. And then you have, if he can get another line going, that's more than likely going to be with one of your star players, whether it's Zegras, Michkov, or TK. And TK's game is kind of not really good. His puck management, his passing, so whether it's a bad pass that he's making or you don't know who he's passing it to. And of course, we talked about him deferring a lot. So I think the lines are like your top guys. You should be at the top of your scoring chart. It seems like if Cates is one kind of catalyst, Foerster is another kind of catalyst. And I don't mean lean too much on that because I talked about it earlier. But what do you think about Grebenkin, at least in the interim while Foerster is not available?
I like it, especially like you said, Isaiah, that he really hunts the puck and he competes. And I think those are good complementary traits for those two guys like Brink and Cates who do the same. I'm not opposed to it at all. And I would like to see him play up in the lineup a little bit. Whenever he's played up in the lineup, you just see something from him, and you almost want some of his skills higher rather than just on the fourth line. And I think the great thing is he can play the fourth line. Like, he's shown that he can be relevant and noticeable enough on the fourth line. But why not give him a shot? Even when you saw him with Konechny a couple games ago against Toronto, right off the bat, he creates some offense and makes something happen. So I would like to see it. I would not be against that whatsoever. And I think it will be very interesting to see what they do with the lines Tuesday night, because of course we know they won't have Foerster, and they're coming off a game where they simply didn't get enough offense. So we will see what Rick Tocchet goes with, if he changes things up or if he keeps things the same. It'll be a big question, I think, going in.
And that's such a tough building. And they have so much mojo right now, the Canadians, with some of the young players really playing well, to the point where some of these fans are actually not even talking about Matvei Michkov now.
That is true.
Yeah, it has seemed like Montreal has this infatuation with Matvei Michkov. Like, I understand what happened in his draft.
With Reinbacher. Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, it's weird. From what I've seen online, it seems like Canadian fans are rather obsessed with him, and when he's not doing well, it seems like they enjoy it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So I think the other kind of like last issue, I had two more things, but like there are some players that seem to be kind of fading out of the lineup. Now, D'Lo is always kind of, Nick Deslauriers is someone who is kind of in limbo when they feel like they need a physical presence. So he's kind of almost like a part-time player for them. But I do but I do wonder, I should say, about Adam Yinning. He's been on the shelf for a while, and it seems like they need what Andrae brings. And it's like, where do you? I would think that the pecking order is, if they had their druthers and waivers are not an issue, Andrae would be in the lineup, Zamula would be backing him up, and then Yinning would be behind those two. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, it seems like they've gone to Igor Zamula recently, and then of course when Emil Andrae has come up, he has gotten in the lineup. So you wonder if Yinning is starting to fade a little bit depth chart wise, and eventually maybe if they will try to get him down the Lehigh Valley through waivers. I think it's a pretty good possibility he would not be claimed. I don't know if he's established enough to really have those eyes where a team's going to want to claim him, but I could be wrong. But yeah, that does seem like a guy that's potentially starting to lose his role a little bit. I don't think he was awful when he played. I think he very much earned his roster spot and was solid when he was in there. But it seems like they're really trying to get Zamula some games and really get him to work. It's almost become matchup based. If they think they need to go a little tougher, a little more defense, they go Yinning. If they're looking for a little more puck moving, they go Zamula. And eventually, that's a tough way to live. I know some coaches do like a rotation because it just gives them some options. It allows those players, when they're sitting, to work with the coaches. But eventually, you want to find something where you have three consistent pairs. You don't want guys coming in and out all the time. It's just a tough way to operate.
It's kind of like in baseball when it's like, oh, we got a left-handed pitcher, so you're batting leadoff. I always hated that, especially as a three-hole hitter. I didn't care who was pitching. It didn't matter. You just wanted them. You just wanted, all right, if I know he's on base, then I can hit this way. I mean, it changes your whole perspective of how you handle it. But no, what was my question? Oh, did Gauthier get sent down or no? Or is he still up with the team?
He is still up. Yep.
Okay.
So Foerster went on IR, and then they called up Emil Andrae. So they're all good roster-wise right now, and I imagine they wanted to bring Gauthier up, for this road trip, keep him here, because I believe they'll probably, if I'm thinking correctly, I think they'll need him unless they want Deslauriers to come into the lineup.
Yeah,
and perhaps that they could go Deslauriers one night and then maybe Gauthier another, or we'll see how it works.
We haven't talked about the irony yet of during that Pittsburgh game that Deslauriers was up, and then it ended up being all the young kids who we want to score dropping gloves at the end of the game, which trust me, you don't want to see that, but you also don't want to see your team get rolled over on. And I thought it was it showed I mean, I guess it showed what kind of locker room it is when people were worried about, trading away certain players and turning over the roster and getting new ones of how it was going to fare out. I'm guessing that locker room's still pretty good,
I agree. I think it's a good locker room. That's one thing I don't think you can complain about, just being inside of it. I think they care about each other. They are willing to stand up for one another. I don't think there are any egos in there. I think they all get along. So if there's one thing going for them, I think the locker room's pretty good. I do think there's something to that. John Tortorella always praised it. He always said it was one of the best locker rooms he had been around. I mean, this is a guy that won a Stanley Cup one year. So I don't think there are any issues there. It's a good locker room for sure.
Yeah, the other thing in that game was that both Zegras and Crosby, who are probably, I know Zegras is fantastic in the shootout, and Crosby's probably, I don't know his record, but I'm betting it's pretty darn good. Were ineligible that game. It had so many oddities. It was really crazy. Yeah. But Jordan, the last thing that I wanted to cover, and Chef, if you had anything else when I finish this one, by all means, weigh in. This past weekend was a frustrating one for hockey fans, and I know you're working for an outlet, an NBC Sports Philly, that has virtually every game for the Flyers. As for an outer towner, we're very reliant on ESPN Plus. Some games are on ESPN, some are on TNT, and YouTube TV had a dispute with ESPN Disney right now. And what I think, I don't get the NHL network. And I think the frustrating thing is, after all this time, the NHL still has about 5 different locations for people that are out of towners, that, where the game will be. And I don't think the league has done that great of a job. I'm wondering if you've had some conversations with people like in the business, or maybe a player or a fan came up to you and said, I wish they could just centralize this thing. I'd be more than willing to pay for it. There's a lot of times people pay for a service only because they want the NHL or the NBA, whatever they like. And it's so frustrating. And I have to go to an illegal streaming service to catch the Flyers game because I'm a podcaster and I'm out of town. Yeah, it's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about it, and I can't say I do. I'm just being totally honest. I don't know enough about I know when the game is on our air, NBC Sports Philadelphia. I'm not really even quite sure if it's available on ESPN Plus or if it isn't, or if people can access it on YouTube TV or not. All I know is when we don't have the game and it's on national, that's not our call. I know sometimes people get frustrated and they can't believe it's a stream-only game on ESPN Plus. That is not. We have no say over that. That comes down to the league and their deals with the national networks. Right. So we love when the game's on our air, and we love when it's local. And we have Jim Jackson and Brian Boucher on the call, and we have our pre and post game shows. We feel like it's comprehensive, and everyone can hopefully access it. But I wish I knew more about where else people can get it. I have heard probably some frustrations about people that are not in the local market, how they access the broadcast. But I just don't know enough about it because it's kind of above my head, and I really don't always have a full grasp of where people can access the games. I just know if you're a cable subscriber and you're in the local area, you get all the games. And then of course, if you're a cable subscriber, you get ESPN, you get TNT, you get ABC. But other than that, I don't know enough about it, but I'm sure there are some frustrations for some people.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. Chef, did you have anything more for Jordan?
I guess, you're, and to be honest, I'm not here to put you on the spot. Do you think it's possible? I mean, we talked about it. Where do you see this team come the Olympic break? All right. We know that probably a lot of deals are being made already. We saw a lot of the free agent market is going to be very thin this summer. And we're seeing guys sign long-term with teams because they can. This is the last year, I guess, to do it, correct? If you can get that 8-year deal or whatever it is. And so my question is, Do you think that there's a chance that there's going to be some big trade before the Olympic break for this team?
I think there's absolutely a chance they add. Their play will dictate a ton of that. If they're not in it, there's going to be no reason to add, especially when you potentially could be a spender in free agency next season. But I think the Flyers do hope to be done with selling. Like they had said that publicly. The president, Keith Jones, has said it. They don't want to they're not in sell mode anymore. I think Danny Briere would like to start adding. But you don't see a ton of hockey trades come the deadline. You see a lot of teams that are looking to add pieces and then they're selling off draft picks.
Exactly.
You don't typically see player for player trades at that time of year. I think it could be a little more interesting in the offseason. When I think the Flyers will have a much better chance to spend and potentially be a player in free agency. And also I think there's just more ability to be creative on the trade market too. But I do think in a perfect world, come the Olympic break, the Flyers are competitive and they're in the race. And they're at least forcing the hand of Danny Briere to give him some hard, good decisions to make. But you have to wonder if they're in that middling 500 area that they were last season, do they really start to, again, think about selling off some pieces and really strategizing to put themselves in the best position for the summer? That's what they did last year. They weren't an awful team, but they were just like a 500 team that just never was piecing a winning streak together. And I think Danny Briere said, enough, I'm going to make some trades. He traded 5 guys in the span of 5 weeks, and they were very much a rebuilding team down the stretch. And I think it would be pretty disappointing if they're in that spot again, because they don't want to be in that spot, and that would mean they are going to miss the playoffs for a 6th consecutive year. And I think they need to get better. They want to, and I think they have a chance to. But time will tell.
And then just for, just because I needed to know, because I was wondering where to, I know I'm broadcasting from my bar in the chef cave here, but it says the Flyers are in first place in penalty kill with a 90.5% percentage. So I might have to take a nip of my own stuff here to see that, but I that shocked me because it kind of crept up and I didn't even notice that until I asked the question during the show. So
no, it's so funny you mentioned that. I just checked as well. Number one, I did not know that. I knew they were around 7 or 8. I think going into the weekend. So that's a positive. The PK has been excellent. I think I don't want to rely on it as much as they have been, but it's been there, which is great.
Yeah. The other thing is they killed so many penalties over the weekend. It drove them up the charts. I mean, great for the penalty kill, but they had a lot of those stick fouls we were talking about earlier. So, boy, it never ends. They go into Montreal. They go to Nashville on Thursday, and they're home with a matinee versus Ottawa. And matinee versus Ottawa, that's a bad combination. Matinees, they don't do too well, and Ottawa matinees, even if they're at home. It should be an interesting week, right?
Indeed. Always interesting in Flyers land. I tell you what, like every day you think there's nothing happening and then something happens. It's never dull here. That is for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jordan, what can you tell the folks? Chef, you got one more before we let Jordan?
Yeah. I know he does his. Are you doing your shows at Live Casino this year again?
No, we are no longer doing them there.
Darn.
So sorry, we are no longer there. So we record typically in our newsroom, or if we can't, we'll do it remote. So no longer doing that. But that was fun while it lasted for sure.
Yeah. Well, if you do any, please let us know. We'll come out and support you.
No, I really appreciate it. And always great to be on with you guys. I appreciate the support. You guys are always sharing our content, which I always recognize. And I think it's awesome what you guys do.
Well, I appreciate that. So people can find you on X and social media. Where can we do that? At J-Hole NBCS?
Yes, spot on. J-Hole NBCS on X. Boom. And our website is NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Jordan, look to have you on again very soon. Appreciate it.
Isaiah, Chef, thank you guys so much. Always great to see you both. Happy to chat Flyers, and anytime, please reach out. I'm more than happy to do it. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of the season.
You too, man. Thanks.
Thanks so much, guys.
Bye. Take care.
Take care.
So, Chef, yes, interesting. I got a call there, and I thought I had an emergency. That's why I had to leave, and it turned out to be just, not a big deal. Anyway,
Well, more importantly, is your car warranty? Were you able to fix it? Extend your car warranty?
yes, exactly. Yeah.
All right.
Or Ice-T's going to come after me and tell me what a fool I am. Yeah. And if you know, you know. Anyway, so yeah, Tuesday in Montreal, Thursday in Nashville, and Saturday a matinee versus Ottawa. And that's, like I said, very scary. Then we're back next Monday. And I don't want to jinx it and tell who the guest is. We've had him on before, but last time I mentioned his name, he couldn't make it, so I'm not going to jinx it. So, Chef, what are your last thoughts for tonight before I give the 411 to the folks?
Sure. I think it's time for to go play on the road here. It's time to get out of Dodge. You lost a couple of games. Time to go on the road where you can just play, put your head down. Not necessarily, not that I think that they were worrying about what the fans were doing, but it's always good to kind of set yourself up when you're away. We had mentioned it before. Remember, it was a couple of years. I think when you were on the call with Jordan, I was talking with Jordan, and I reminded him, when they did that big reset, when they won, it started in San Jose on the West Coast, that huge strike. I think they just need like a little mini one to right the ship now, just to get out there. So I think it's good. And I know I say some things that are not generally agreed upon by Fly Era fandom. So if you want to disagree with me or you want to talk about it, by all means, catch me on Chef to the Left B on X. Chef to the Left B on X. Or just look for O&B Puckcast and click on there.
That's right, at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck. And of course, you can reach out to the great Dan Silver, who obviously is tied up tonight at DSilver88, at DSilver88 on both X and Blue Sky. And of course, at O&B Puckcast is where you can find us on X and Blue Sky. Also on GETTR at O&B Puckcast, at O&B Puckcast. And you can follow the O&B Puckcast on several podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeart, TuneIn, and Amazon Audible. And of course, we're on YouTube and Facebook. Just type in O&B Puckcast, it'll pop right up for you. And if you could follow and subscribe, and on YouTube, hit that notification bell, we really do appreciate it. And of course, the likes help us move up with the algorithm. We really do appreciate it. And people looking for Philadelphia Flyer podcasts are more likely to find us. A lot easier if you do that. So that's all we have for you tonight. So until next time, everybody, hopefully this time next Monday, we'll see you, and we'll have 3 Flyer wins. I'll tell you what, 6 points. If they get 4 out of 6, I think after these last 2 games, I'd be happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, anyway, I think so too.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, and take care.